another episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where we unpack what it really means to be a man in today's world. Yep. Not that outdated stereotypes, not the hustle till you drop narratives, but real, grounded, emotionally intelligent masculinity. Yes. The kind that leads with presence, not with the pressure. Yep. So, dear listeners, I'm your host Avik, and today's guest is someone who doesn't just talk high performance, she embodies it from boardrooms to burnout recovery. You heard that correct, yes. So, please welcome Vidya Ramanathan. Welcome to the show, Vidya.
Oh, it's lovely to be here, Avik. Thanks for having me.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Vidya, for joining us today. And before we delve deep into the topic today, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear listeners, Vidya is a powerhouse high performance coach, tech entrepreneur, speaker, and the creator of the True Resonance Method. So she helps leaders, especially those who look successful on the outside, finally align their inner world with their outer impact. And fellas, like if you have ever found yourself overwhelmed, emotionally drained, or you say stuck in self-doubt while also chasing success, then this episode might just change your game. So I'll not take much of your time, listeners. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show again, Vidya.
Okay, lovely. It's great. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So Vidya, like uh you talk about helping people uproot emotional overwhelm. Like so if I ask, like, what's the real root cause? Like, most people overlook, even the visionaries as well. So, what do you have to say?
I think a lot of people take what has happened in their earlier years, in their formative years, I'd say between age 7 and, usually 17, 14 or 17 years. And because they were, in the circumstances they
Mm,
twisted to work for them at that time. But what happens is they keep that same construct going into their adult years. And a lot of times, what life will show us is that some of those constructs are outdated, you know? Just like I have this funny joke I make about things having an expiry date, so even our thoughts and the way we think of ourselves has expiry date, right? So
mm,
when we can think of it in that way, we realize that what the universe is trying to show us is a way to keep ourselves fresh in our minds at all times. So instead of carrying those outdated concepts, views, beliefs, and models of how we used to function, which used to work for us, we can now step into a different perspective of those without having to reject those from our system, without having to struggle with that, and instead see that there is a brilliance behind why the universe does what it does.
hmm. Oh, very truly said. Yes. And on this, if I have to ask, like, why do you think that high performing men, in particular, are so resistant to addressing that root cause? I mean, what's the
Well, it's a great question. What I think happens with a lot of cultural imposition on men is men are told you need to be stoic, you can't express emotions, you have to be this way. So there's a societal expectation of men to be the strong ones, and strength is associated with not expressing emotions in our cultures and societies. So, what happens is a lot of men end up suppressing their emotions instead of finding healthy outlets. And then what happens is because it's suppressed, it gets overexpressed in ways we don't want it to get overexpressed. So, um, what I found when I was working as in IT in corporate America, I found that men were very stoic, didn't have the capacity. I used to be like one of those women walking into a room of 100 men, right back in the day when I was in IT. And what I found was that they were great at what they would do, but they were so inside of themselves, they had this resistance to even allowing themselves to experience emotions. And the thing is, emotions are what makes us human. So, when we can, as a society, give men the permission to express those emotions, we can be more connected even in our relationships, in our business partnerships, because that's really the foundation, although we keep denying it over and over again. So, that really, I think, is what causes that internal conflict for a lot of high performing men, that they have to be a certain way. Behind the suit and the jacket, they are not allowed to show who they are on the inside.
I 500% agree with you. I mean, yeah, I mean that hits deep. I mean, I have seen people. I have been there, like running on the fumes, thinking I just needed a better routine. When, uh, when really I needed a better relationship with myself. I mean, yeah. So for any men listening to this, I'll rest right when I'm done. Maybe the real flex is knowing uh when to stop, when to pause, but not to push every time. So
Mm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct, Avik, in that there's a time when we go internal within us, right? And then there's a time when we go outside of us to find the answers. And I think there needs to be a balance between that, because a lot of men, like when they express emotions, what they're told when they're young is, you're a boy, you shouldn't cry. But big boys don't cry. That is the kind of dialogue that gets imprinted in a man's mind, right?
yes.
And actually, when you look at the biological impact of that, tears are actually very healthy. It's a release mechanism. It doesn't say anything about weakness or strength. It's just a release mechanism. So
Yes.
when we can give permission for people to be themselves, they bring that into their relationships. Like a lot of the high performers, the reason they struggle in their relationships is because they can't relate emotionally to their partners and say, hey,
Mm,
I'm actually going through this inner turmoil. I have this self doubt in me right now, whether I'm going to make it through this huge challenge that has come my way. And I feel insufficient to handle it. And when they can't express that to their partners, their connections with their relationships starts to break down. Their business partnerships start to break down.
mm,
Overall, it starts to create an impact of you know worsening their emotional situation, right? So instead of adding to the turmoil, I believe the solution is to allow for a healthy expression of those emotions, to where everybody, in fact, I would say more so high performing men, can feel seen and heard too, just like other people want to be even seen and heard. So,
exactly. Very true. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like you say, emotional power is a kind of new currency of leadership. So if you can also break down that, what actually looks like in real life.
yeah, absolutely. So,
Mhm.
I think that, when we are asked to detach from emotions, emotions can be seen more like a messenger rather than anything else, right? And so when we say detach from your emotions, we are cutting off our access to the wealth of information that the emotions are bringing us.
Wow.
And as we do this, we start to get disconnected from our purpose as well. So, what I've seen in a lot of high performing entrepreneurs, especially men, is that they keep pushing themselves to get to that next level, and then that next level, and then that next level. And it's all in the head. Like if I keep pushing myself, I think you alluded to this earlier on, is if I just keep pushing myself and pushing myself and pushing myself, I'll eventually get there. But the thing is, when you feel disconnected on the inside, no matter what you do, that emotion is going to pull you down energetically. And after a point, you're just going to end up being in burnout mode, and that is not a bad thing sometimes, because that may be exactly what you need in order for you to see that you've gotten disconnected from your emotions. So,
Very, very true. Yeah. Wow. And also, if I may ask, like, if you can share a moment when you personally had to lead with the emotional power instead of control.
It's very interesting because this is, as a high power woman working in a man's world, I actually had learned to take on much of the masculinity from the corporate America at a very early age. Because when I moved to the US, I was fairly young and
Yeah.
I just thought that's how everybody does it, you know?
Mm.
So in a weird, innocent way, I took it on thinking that's how you're supposed to lead. But what I discovered was that I was feeling horrible on the inside because that's not who I was on the inside. I was an emotional being. I wanted to express myself. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be valued. I wanted people to tell me it was going to be okay when I was going through tough times in my business, you know? So, in a lot of ways, that emotional disconnection was important for me to have because I realized that I was surrounded by it and I actually had experienced severe burnout from my IT profession. And when that happened, I realized that I
Mm.
hadn't given myself access to feeling my
Mm.
tiredness, my emotions, what they were telling me. And I was just powering my way through it instead of listening to the messages. So it was also a beautiful experience. On the one side, it was really challenging. On the other side, it was also a beautiful experience because
Mm.
the message was come home to yourself, be yourself, and be okay being yourself.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're just going to go walk all over other people. That's not what it's
Yeah.
about. It's about understanding when emotions are spiking you up and down to understand that there's something that is triggering you and taking responsibility for that so that when you are leading large teams, you're able to see what the intrinsic motivation is for people and why they do what they do in life.
Yeah.
And so having that ability to emotionally connect with others and at the same time maintain a presence that is really nurturing and calm is what leadership is all about. It's not let me bulldozer my way and get my way,
Okay.
because when we can motivate people, right, in what they naturally do well, they're going to succeed. So the key is to regulate ourselves so that this is what I found is when I started to regulate myself, I
Mhm.
started getting a team in place that was more about what they wanted to do in life. I would hire, my hiring choices were better. So I would hire people for when they really love to do what they
Mm.
do. That's when I would hire them into the roles, not because the resume looked good, you
Mm.
know, and I made wiser decisions in my business. And when I was doing that, my teams were more cohesive. You're still going to have, ups and downs in
Mm.
any business situation, but the teams were more cohesive and they really looked to me as a leader because I wasn't experiencing these sudden outbursts and sudden slumps of energy, sudden bursts of anger, and they were more like, oh, this is a person I can trust and rely on. She's got my back. And at the same time, she's going to push me to get to that next level because she understands that for me, my big picture is this. This is where I want to get to in my life. So there's more of an opportunity to have an open dialogue with other people. And when I find that when we can connect with the
Mm.
core of why the person is doing what they're doing, they're more likely to be, intrinsically motivated in what they do.
Mm. Understood. Okay. So like for men who have always identified with the performance, like being the achiever, the provider,
Yeah.
so what's the first step to shifting towards emotional mastery without losing their edge?
I think, the first step for men, I would say, is to get truly transparent and honest about their internal value system. This is not like, values like I value honesty or integrity. When I say values, I'm talking about what are the core desires that you brought in with you when you birthed into this planet. And most of these desires come from a perception of void from the childhood. So, getting very clear on what that is and structuring their lives in accordance with that, that to me is absolutely critical because it anchors us in our why. Why do we want this? You know how they ask these questions behind why do you want this? Then why do you want that? And why do you want that beyond that,
Mm.
right? So it's like it helps us to unfold our deepest why and why we want to do what we want to do. And from there, we can be more connected leaders. So I would say that is the basic step. And then from there, working through all the subconscious beliefs that come up when we're not living in that value system. Because I will tell you, beyond just arranging your schedule, to match what you need to produce in the form of output in your business, the most important thing is to actually align yourself with what you value the most, what you're really good at in this lifetime, your zone of genius. And then from there, having the courage and the emotional maturity to delegate everything else or to remove it off your plate because it's not something you're ever going to get good at. It's not your zone of genius. So getting to that step will not only help with not having that burnout factor come in to high
Mhm.
performance, but also it's going to help people stay in what's most important. So let me give you an example of this. In my case, my fitness is very important to me. My coaching is very important to me, and relationships are very important to me. But if I ignore any one of these, then inside of myself, I'm not open to giving or receiving anything new in my life because my energy is, I don't have what I need in order to feel nourished in life. So that is the core starting point, I would say, for anybody who wants to really take charge of their emotional world and step into a new way of living and being.
Wow, that's amazing. So, um, okay. So if I have to ask like this, like, um, what does the true resonance mean to you? I mean, what's your message for any man listening who feels like he's lost touch with his purpose? So, what do you say?
Yeah. So I think my message would be if you've lost, see, a lot of us can relate to this, right? We start a business because we have an innate desire to see something change in the world. And then what happens is slowly we start realizing that we're going to need to bring X, Y, and Z pieces into it. And these are not the pieces that necessarily stoke our inner fire. So what we end up doing is, oh, it's my business, therefore I have to do it. Find a better way to do that. And true resonance is about stepping into inner leadership within yourself, leading your inner world. And when you are in charge of your inner world, now you are more in a position to help others lead themselves. So you're stepping out of managing others and instead showing others how to lead themselves. Because now they're stepping into their zones of genius
Mm.
instead of just doing a task without any connection to the task. And the way any business succeeds, because when you look at the individuals in the organization or company,
Mhm.
they have what resonates with them. That's their true resonance. And then you have what the company's mission and objectives are. And now if we can find a way to link what is intrinsically inspiring to this person with the company's objectives and mission, then now we have a match. If
Hmm.
we are not able to find that, no matter what you give in the form of incentives to this person, they're not going to be intrinsically motivated. So I found through, 15, 20 years of working with corporates and entrepreneurs that extrinsic motivation only works up to a point. You can give them incentives that say, I'm going to give you, 2 weeks of bonus at the end of the year, but if somebody doesn't value money, that's not going to mean much to them, you know? So, really, stepping into that model of
Hmm.
what does this person value the most? Now, in my case, where I had this lady that I was working with some time back. She was trying to set up her organization for success. And one of the things we
Right.
saw was that one of her employees was very family oriented, but she was incentivizing her employee with a bonus that was more finance oriented. And I asked her to have an experiment with this and offer that other lady a beautiful incentive package where she could get 2 weeks paid vacation with her family instead of just a bonus check. And she saw this employee just skyrocketed in her performance. It was amazing, so
Yeah.
that it's so I mean, you're spending money either way, but the way you're presenting it and shows how much you emotionally want to connect with that person. And that is why I say emotional leadership is the currency for the future. It's the new currency.
What an amazing conversation, dear listeners. I would say what a ride. Gentlemen, if this episode cracked something open, let it. The version of you that leads with the emotional depth, not just with the strategic hustle. It's already within reach. And Vidya, you didn't just drop the wisdom, you actually dropped freedom. I mean, that's I have to say. I mean, it's really awesome. And Vidya, if someone wants to connect with you, how they can connect?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for asking. So I am on Instagram. I can be found at My Future Now by Vidya. So that's at My Future Now by Vidya. And Avik, I'd love to offer your audience one of my very beautiful blueprints to step into great leadership. If they just DM me with the word 10, um, I'll get them the 10 habits of exceptional leaders, which will be really a mind-blowing set of 10 things they can do to change their life immediately.
Wow, that's amazing. Great. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes, and you have heard it. You just go and follow the same. And also, with this hope, until next time, remember that masculinity isn't about being tough all the time, it's all about being real and showing up with the heart, courage, and clarity. So, this is the host, Avik, signing off from Mind Over Masculinity. Keep rising. Thank you so much.